Hello and welcome back. If this is your first time visiting me on a live stream, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. If you have been at one of my other live streams, you'll know that they've all gone well up until the last one, which the system just crashed. I know LinkedIn was having some connectivity issues. So we're going to try this a different one today or this time. And hopefully everything will go well. If not, I'll do like I did the last one. I'll just send the slides to the people who are interested. I'll put them in the LinkedIn events page for this event, and you can read the slides. Send me a DM, email me, Manny MANNY at manuelwlloyd.com. That's Manny MANNY at manuelwlloyd.com. So today we're going to talk about something that probably will rub a few feathers, only because the internet is so profitable for people, cloud providers, software companies, SaaS. I even saw an email where, I don't know if it was Sam Altman or one of the AI CEOs kind of teased a SaaS application. And I got to tell you, I have SaaS fatigue. I have internet fatigue. Yes, I'm using the internet now to speak with you. And I think the internet's fine for those type of cultural, social things. But anything mission-based, yeah, it works. But how many times, what are the number of breaches that have been involved with the internet? 80%? 90%? Closer to 100 almost? It's pretty damn close. And it's just tiring. It honestly is tiring. And that's fine for people who can tolerate it. But if you're a federal government agency, critical infrastructure provider, a defense contractor, even a Fortune 500 company that's providing nationwide services, critical services, you can't afford a breach. And it gets tiring. So, we're not just and let me take this screen down here. Where is it at? Okay. We're not just redefining the internet. We're stripping away its mythology under Zero Doctrine. The internet is never trusted. I tell the story. I called it a dream, but it truly was a nightmare. When I first got involved with the internet back in the late 80s, early 90s, I was on a government web forum called TechNet. And the information was very valuable to me at the time. It was public facing, but it made me wonder. I wonder, can I get to the servers? Now, I never did anything, so don't come after me, federal agency, alphabet soup agencies. But I thought, what if somebody was that desirable of getting and gaining access, unauthorized access to this network? What's stopping them? And I began to look at the architecture, the topology of networking at the time, and I was terrified. I woke up in a dream, a nightmare, and literally physical cold sweats, thinking about what could happen to our country if someone took control digitally. It was beyond war games and that movie and I don't know what movies were out at that time. I was a geek, so I wasn't really a movie guy. But it just scared the hell out of me. That wow. And so I began to go on this journey and I ended up calling this idea. I tried to patent it, Jacabi, GECABI, which is government, education, civil, and business interoperability, and it didn't turn out to be the best route for me. Lawyers told me, friends told me, and I saw for myself. I had to reveal details I wasn't really willing to share. So I went and changed the name, and it evolved to InterOpsis, and I turned it into a framework. I made protocols. Um, I made uh, a constitution, the cybersecurity constitution, and I made a doctrine. And so it still can be patented as a methodology or a process patent, but I'm not really interested in that either. What I really am interested in is protecting national security. And I think that the age of frameworks is dead. They've gotten us this far, but they just cannot take us any further. If you look back from Norton utility stopping viruses up until FireEye, um, CrowdStrike, stopping APTs, it's just not enough. We need doctrine. So I've never trusted the internet ever. I'm always suspect, and I laughed at quote unquote secure over the internet. I've always laughed at that, and I've lived in this world for 30 years, and I've managed to get my way through it. But I waited and I waited, and no one did anything. Everybody was trying to monetize this tool, this toxic, untrusted domain, dark cloud of a tool, because people love convenience. And convenience is one of the poorest excuses, if not the poorest, for a lack of security. Well, the internet's there for you there, buddy. It's convenient and it lacks security. And you can say, we secure our internet. No, you don't. You can't secure something you don't own. You don't own the internet. You don't even own your D channel on your router or your firewall that goes to your telco. You don't even own that. So you own the physical router, but you don't own the logic behind it. Who's to say that telco doesn't have an internal employee that's working for a nation state, and you are a critical infrastructure provider, and they're implementing malware through your iOS or whatever router you use? You do not own it. I mean, the internet's always watched, always deceived, and never allowed to carry out missions in our world. It's always watched, always deceived. It should be a deception terrain more so than a decision-making tool. So let's get into the presentation. We talk here about the internet is the honeypot, and what Zero Doctrine reacts, and why Zero Doctrine rejects the cloud. Actually, I had a client one time. Everything was going well. Big software company, mid-size, wasn't really too big, but they had a big impact on the industry that they were in. They had carved out a new category, and they hit a home run. And they had a bunch of other people, copycats, follow them. Well, one day, the COO and I had a conversation, and he says to me, "Hey, we want to do this webinar with you, and we want you to write a white paper for us on 100% cloud." I guess he didn't realize that even though I tolerated the cloud, I would never go for 100% cloud of anything. That's critical. And this was a critical infrastructure provider. Well, they delivered services to critical infrastructure providers, but let's just put it like this. If one of those providers were to ever have gotten breached, it would have affected a great part of the American economy. And I said, no, we're going to have to part ways there because I don't believe anything should be 100% cloud. That is dangerous. That's no different than putting all your eggs in one basket, let alone over the internet. So I have always been an advocate against 100% no rails or no reins on cloud. So the question I present to you here, excuse me, is what is the greatest threat to national infrastructure? What if it's not a hacker, right? What if it's the belief that the cloud means it's secure? Now, I'm a simple country boy from Mississippi. I love my cornbreads and my collard greens. I love my butter beans and my rice. I love my fat back and my neck bones. So I'm really simple. The way I put it is like this. The cloud is nothing more than a marketing term, meaning your stuff is sitting in somebody else's place and you have access to it. Now, in most cases, you don't have full control. You just have access to it. And they can tell you all you want to. You have root admin access. Doesn't mean a damn thing. If they were to shut down their building, or if someone were to come into their building, they can lift your data up out of there and walk away with it. And you couldn't do anything about it. Nothing. You don't own anything. I mean, absolutely anything on the internet. Don't believe me? Check the dark web and see if your email is there, or your social security number, or your bank cards, or your credit cards. You don't own anything. Any transaction over the internet is toxic. Period. Full stop. So the question is, what if the greatest threat to national infrastructure isn't a hacker, but our belief that cloud means secure? You know, another question would be, what if the very thing you're relying on to protect your systems is also what's mapping them for your adversary? That's the lie of the modern cloud. The doctrinal premise. Under Zero Doctrine, the internet is not an operational terrain. It's a deception terrain, a trap, a leak zone. We don't see the internet as a convenience or necessity. I mean, the first thing you do, I had a medical provider who's moving locations. The number one question from the execs now, these are the executives. What about our internet? Will we have internet? Is the internet going to be working? And I just had to laugh because it's in their mind, it's a necessity, and it's also a convenience. We, in my world, see it as a controlled decoy. Zero Doctrine doesn't soften this; it enforces it. It's codified in our cybersecurity constitution. Let's define what a honeypot is. A honeypot is a lure, a trap. We've weaponized the internet against itself by turning it into a terrain for deception, not deployment. It's doctrine. It's not a tactic. Now, if this thing starts acting up, which it looks like it is, we're going to keep talking and just send out the slides. Anyway, so why the internet can't be trusted? Do I really need to ask that question? Or do I need to even make that statement? Because there's no chain of custody. There's no sovereign control. There's infinite attack surface. It's an infinite attack surface. It's a platform for dependencies beyond jurisdiction and invisible third-party inferences. And that's just the beginning. This is not a deep dive. I'll probably do a deep dive on this because I don't think people will get it the first few times. Sovereign systems require custody, visibility, chain of command. The internet offers none of that. It's untraceable, uncontrollable, and architecturally unaccountable. Ask anyone. Ask your IT people. What's the internet? What does it look like? And then ask them, well, what does our data center look like? I'm sure some of you have internal data centers there, even if you just have your server room. They can describe that better than they can describe the internet, because once you leave, here's what I want you to do. A simple test. Take your biggest customer internationally and go to your command prompt if you're using Windows, and go to your terminal if you're using a Mac, and type traceroute and the name of the domain that is your biggest customer. So let's just say traceroute manuelwlloyd.com. And every IP address you see is what's called a hop. And that hop is from router to router to router to router. I can guarantee you, you will not know where those routers are located and who they belong to. There's no accountability. Zilch. Let's go with a real world case. A U.S. cloud breach. Microsoft. Oh boy, Microsoft. Foreign code instructed by Chinese engineers to Microsoft, quote unquote, digital escorts into the Pentagon's system. The quote was, "We trust what they're doing is not malicious, but we can't tell." I laugh cynically, not in humor. We trust what they're doing is not malicious, but we really can't tell. You mean to tell me a nation state non-sovereign citizen can type into a sovereign system commands that sovereign citizens don't understand, but yet they're putting them in willingly? Talk about new age Trojan horse. Foreign code slipped into Microsoft DoD cloud stack. No oversight, no audit trail, no sovereignty. Enter into the room. My cybersecurity constitution, specifically for this case, calls for sovereign oversight of technical input. And basically what that constitution said, or that article says, that clause says, is that no code or configuration or anything shall be entered into a sovereign system by a non-sovereign citizen, by a non-sovereign citizen. Cloud it's an exposure architecture. Should be. The more software defined your mission is, the less sovereign your posture is. Every time we centralize into the cloud, we expose a shared weakness. Cloud is a misnomer. It's just someone else's infrastructure. Like I said, often not even your own. You have private clouds, you have co-opting situations or co-location situations. But we've gone from information superhighway to World Wide Web to the internet to the net to cloud. What's going to be next? It's the same thing. Hadn't changed in years. It may have grown, but hadn't changed. The concept hadn't changed. Now, I try to present something to DARPA. We had a long conversation, probably about 2 years. They don't like the idea, or at least they didn't then, of no internet. They scoffed at it. I can guarantee you that this will be the way of sovereignty in the future. Put it in writing, set it in stone, write it in a book. This will be the way. The internet doesn't equal infrastructure. How did we even come up with that? How? If you wouldn't put nukes on TikTok, why are you managing SCADA via public internet pathways? Internet pathways. Infrastructure must be sovereign, air-gapped, and doctrine aligned. You don't fight wars with checklists and recommendations necessarily from some think tank. You fight it with war doctrine. Well, this is cyber war, and it needs cyber war doctrine. Sovereign infrastructure is on-prem, it's air-gapped, identity-bound, and governed. The internet is a strategic decoy, not a trusted layer. And if you put it in your trusted layers, you're wrong. I'm just going to flat out tell you, you're wrong. The internet has been known as an untrusted domain for quite some time now, decades. Don't let convenience and the false need for necessity fool you. Data sovereignty versus data hosting. Data hosting was big. I tried to be an MSP. I thought it was cool. It just didn't jive with me. I did not like having control of somebody else's data without any oversight. Just a SLA. Here's what I'm going to do if this happens. Well, it's going to happen. You're talking about last mile and fiber underground and DS switches and all of these things that were about when I was doing it. I don't know what they have now. And hosting doesn't equal control. Data must obey a national. Now, keep in mind, I'm not someone who talks to SMBs and SMEs. I used to a long time ago in the first iteration of my business, 20, 30 years ago. But this is not something that a SMB could probably survive. They won't be able to survive because they need the internet. They have hooked us onto the internet so badly with Office 365 and Google Workplace and this SaaS and that SaaS and QuickBooks and and even Great Plains and Solomon, all of those things. It's so convenient just to put it on the cloud. They talk about how easy it is. Well, anything that's easy for you might even be more easy for your enemy, for your adversary. But the people I'm talking to are government agencies, critical infrastructure providers, defense contractors, and Fortune 500 companies that are critical to our economy. But their data must obey national doctrine, enclave boundaries, life cycle and retention law, and insider threat protection. One of the biggest vulnerabilities is insider protection. Just ask the people who work with Eric Snowden. You know, the doctrine draws a hard line. My doctrine does. It draws a hard line. It's, like I said, you're a small business, you're not going to be able to do this. Hosting data is not the same as governing it. Governing it. I can't talk today. Sovereignty requires lifecycle control, zone-based access, and self-determined deletion. Talk about my Phoenix and my Revive protocols with that portion, but not today. So the enclave mindset. Every InterOpsis deployment uses stealth. And stealth stands for, we have it there. Secure, tamper-proof, enclave, air gap, lockdown, threat resistant, and hard. In non-geek speak or non-InterOpsis speak, it's a highly secure data center. Now, a data center in the typical world is a big room with ACs and UPSs and all of that good jazz. An enclave, a stealth enclave, could be in a box, in the field, in war, on deployment. We've gotten this down to a science where the mission is what we're focused on. And there's only so much data that you need to protect. Otherwise, you're deceiving your enemy. You're deceiving your adversary. I know a lot of this sounds foreign, and it probably is because I know I'm the one that came up with it, but I don't think anybody else has come up with anything like it. You could say zero trust, but zero trust is it's a recommendation tool. It's a tool itself. My stuff is a constitution. It's an enforcement mechanism. So there's a big difference. So the enclave thinking is that every InterOpsis deployment uses stealth zones. These aren't metaphors, they're technical architecture with zero exposure and, yes, zero internet and zero leakage. Now, at the end of the day, zero compromise. Now, when I say zero internet, people freak out. It doesn't mean you don't use the internet. It means you don't use the internet as a tactic, part of your mission-facing tactics. Why? Why would you do that? Why would you open the door to everybody in the world to be able to set their foot in and hoping, that's your strategy, hope that they don't break your encryption? Well, my friend, get ready for quantum computing and Q-Day, where they're stealing all this stuff now. And you may see that they're not doing anything. Well, they are. They're just gathering right now. But then when quantum computing hits the adoption curve as ubiquitous, you'll see a lot more breaches. Trust me. That's why you have to prepare now. You can't wait. You cannot wait. So the model of zero exposure, there's no direct internet exposure, no cloud to cloud or cloud to core dependencies. All connections outbound only through BridgeGuard, which is one of my protocols, and all data segmented through DNA, which is another protocol. BridgeGuard is what it says. It bridges one enclave to the next, and it guards the data transmission and the data at rest. And DNA segments the data based upon mission. Every piece of data. Even if the mission is to deceive, that has a tag. Okay. So the uh, the strategy is to have a decoy use. Use the internet to deceive and not to defend. Honeypot nodes, spoof telemetry, and AI bait. Because our systems are only outbound through BridgeGuard and enforce air gap logic with DNA protocol segmentation, there's no inbound vulnerability sector. You take it out altogether. We don't avoid the internet. We own it as bait. That's about the best as you can own it. Using AI generated lures and telemetry decoys, we trap attackers in the outer rings and study them. We look at their patterns. We look at their behavior. And they think they're getting everything. You know how a honeypot works. If you're listening to this, and if you don't, just Google it or look at a video or whatever the case may be. Well, and maybe some of you have already thought, I'm going to use the internet as my honeypot. You should. And kudos to you for thinking that way. So we're talking about compliance versus sovereignty. You know, most cloud is FedRAMP compliant, meaning the government has these standards for federal agencies to use cloud, because for the longest time they wouldn't use cloud. Now someone's come up with the bright idea to have a compliant checklist. If you do this, and that, you're secure. No, there's no such thing as secure over the internet. Get that out of your head. There's no such thing as secure over the internet. Because compliant is not command. FedRAMP tells you what they allow, but Zero Doctrine tells you what you control. This is the difference between outsourcing safety and enforcing sovereignty. You're outsourcing your sovereignty and your safety to a cloud provider. No matter if there's SSAE compliant and you know, it's like a pillow, I guess. You turn it on one side, it's cool. Turn it on the other, and then it gets warmed up. And then you turn it on the other side, it's cool. Then you just keep going through that same routine. But I'd rather sleep through the night. So compliance versus sovereignty is what you have to weigh in the balance. Clause 2, internet as deception terrain. The internet shall not serve as a primary operational domain. This is my cybersecurity constitution. It is to be treated as a monitored deception terrain, segmented from mission critical systems and governed by sovereign deception protocols. Excuse me. So this slide and the one before it says it all. The cloud assumes shared risk. The InterOpsis stack eliminates it. That's the cost of sovereignty. Uncompromising structure. From data breadcrumbs to AI mimicry. Our doctrine uses the internet to confuse, not to depend. And too many organizations depend on the internet. Real networks live behind the doctrine firewall, not a vendor-based firewall that gets breached over and over and over and over and over again. I'm not telling you to rip out your entire hardware and software infrastructure. I'm telling you to implement doctrine. Change the way you think. Change the way you react. Change what you depend on. You know, The national implication is that we lost ground the moment we trusted the cloud. We did. Reclaiming it seems what it means rejecting its myths. The only way forward is doctrinal. Here's how I compare the two. And I'll just read it. You can see it yourself. But the cloud stack is multi-tenant. They can say they're segmented off. They're in VMs. They're in VLANs. Blah, blah. I really don't care because you can breach a VLAN. They have shared infrastructure. They're SaaS dependable. And they have cloud service provider policies that they depend on. Policy is not law. It's not doctrine. On the other hand, Zero Doctrine has a multi-net system. There are 6 networks that are involved in the Zero Doctrine. 6. And the internet is one of them. But there are 5 more. They're all air-gapped. They're all protocol first. And they use a constitutional policy. So here's the deception life cycle. Okay, from data breadcrumbs to AI mimicry, our doctrine uses the internet to confuse, not to depend. Like I said earlier, real networks live behind the doctrinal firewall. Stage 1, public-facing digital bait. Stage 2, algorithmic tripwires. And we have a protocol called Titan AI. Behavioral intel mapping. Air gap, the last stage is air gap, lockout, and decoy redirect. Now, it is come to my attention that because my system retaliates, and I'm glad I'm in the industry that I am in because other than the Fortune 500s, possibly, maybe the defense contractors, it's in some places against the law to retaliate with your AI, which I find to be pretty crazy since hackers and nation states are using AI to attack. So it depends on the state you're in, or the region you're in, the country you're in. You may want to look at the law on that. Talk with your attorneys about that. But just know that you just can't automatically retaliate. It might be against the law. My system retaliates, but I work closely with government, national security. So I let them deal with that. And speaking of national stuff, the national implication is that treating the internet as an asset has cost nations sovereignty. We must reverse the doctrine. We lost ground the moment we trusted the cloud. Reclaiming it means rejecting the myths. The only way forward is doctrinal. What does this mean for you? If your operational technology, your SCADA, your AI model, or grid rely on cloud managed or is cloud managed, you're not sovereign. You're outsourcing your sovereignty, but you're not sovereign. You're not in command. That's not a philosophy. That's a reality. You need to change that. I'm giving you a call to shift. Step away from the false security. Step into doctrinal sovereignty. There's no halfway sovereign systems. You are either governed by doctrine or by someone else's platform. Choose your command. Do your vendors control you, or do you control you? Well, think about it. If all your stuff is in Azure or Amazon or Google Cloud or wherever, if they decide, shareholders are having an argument. We know we're going to get dinged for this, but who cares? We haven't bothered you know what's. We're just going to turn it off. That's a scary thought when you think about it, because you have no control. So where do you start? Well, first of all, I must say, this is not a product pitch. It's a doctrinal call to action. Listen, read, train, take the audit, join the simulations. The doctrine is ready. It took me 30 years to build, but it's ready. You can find all of this stuff on my website at manuelwloyd.com. That's ManuelWLLOYD.com. And once again, I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. I hope sincerely that you enjoyed it. Take care, and I'll talk to you on the next one. Have a great day, everyone.